Next is our presentation of this evening, and our presentation is on RTI, which is Response to Intervention. That presentation will be given by Dave Hurst, Dave Kay, Cindy McCullen, Kyle Meyer, and Laura Feinberg.
Again, welcome to Hammer-Grill Elementary School. Tonight we will be talking about response to intervention, RTI, which is the practice of providing high-quality instruction and intervention matched to student needs. Again, tonight presenting will be our Assistant Superintendent for Educational Programs, Dave Hurst. We also have Cindy McCallum, Laura Feinberg, Kyle Meyer, and Deb Wooster is also here tonight to provide support. So Deb, whenever you want to jump in, feel free.
Sorry, Deb, your name wasn't on the agenda. I would have said it.
No, it wasn't. I just have to embarrass her, that's all.
Me too.
As a principal, I just want to thank you for putting this into the budget for this school year. It is, in a short time, for me, I've seen a lot of progress being made in a couple of areas. First is we were able to hire Bethlehem teachers to fill some of the RTI positions. Those teachers, they already had an understanding of the curriculum, of our programs, the schools, the community, and also the expectations. So they were able to, again, come in and hit the ground running. Also, as far as scheduling, we're able to have people almost full-time in the elementary schools. So it has helped us block scheduling so we can pull kindergartners at a certain time, first graders at a different time, because before, we'd have to pull a child out for reading at 9:30, then math at 11:30. So they would be missing a lot of classroom instruction. So having the teachers here full-time, we've been able to tighten that up and make the scheduling a lot better than it ever has been. And finally, for me, the most important factor in student success is connections made. With the new RTI positions and the program, the connections have been made between teacher and student, as the teacher gets to see the student throughout the school day, not only in their small groups, but also out in the hallway, in the cafeteria, during their specials, when they're out at recess. So the student knows that the teacher is there for them. They'll check in, hey, how are you doing with this project? How's that book that you're reading? The other connection is teacher to teacher. The teachers are able to meet before school, after school, rather than being in one building one day, another building another day. They're able to be in there helping provide resource to our classroom teachers to help students succeed. And finally, the connection between the teacher and the parents. If we had a teacher maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and that day happened to be a holiday, that parent may not be able to get a hold of that teacher for a couple weeks, and that's too long. Our teachers now are able to get back immediately. They can have personal meetings with parents, phone calls with parents. They're able to make that connection, and all those things put together, for me, has made a world of difference. So on behalf of the principals, I wanted to thank you for putting this in the budget, and I will turn the program over to Dave Hurst. So Dave?
Okay, thanks, Dave. So the next few slides, I'm just going to go over sort of the highlights of what an RTI program looks like, just to give you a little bit more familiarity with it, and to sort of go over some of the regulations that the state's put into place to ensure that our program meets those needs. So the RTI program, response intervention, is on a tiered system. And basically the way it works is you're in a particular tier depending upon the level of support that you need in either ELA or math. So we have tier 1, we sometimes refer to this as where our students are being progress monitored. They're interventions that are given within the classroom itself by the classroom teacher. Students are pooled into smaller groups, and again, they receive differentiated instruction from their regular classroom teacher. Students in our Tier 2 level are pulled out for reading and math services 3 times a week, 25 to 30 minutes, and the student-to-teacher ratio is 4 to 1. And when we talk a little bit more, Dave mentioned that the level of support having these RTI specialists has provided in years past we were not able to even come close to maintaining that 4-to-1 ratio. It was very common to see a 7, 8, even 9-to-1 ratio, which, as you can imagine, we have some of our needier students now. You're trying to provide support 8 and 9 students at a time. It becomes very, very difficult. And then the final tier is tier 1, or tier 3 rather, which is still a pullout, except for now it's 4 times a week for about that same amount of time. But now you're down to a 2-to-1 ratio. This is something we've never been able to offer until this year. So you can imagine, I mean, our neediest students are in a 2-to-1 ratio, and in the past, if they were lucky, they were in a class with 8 or 9-to-1. So this has been a huge benefit this year, being able to provide the service that these students desperately need in the appropriate ratio. So just to formalize a little bit more about some of the highlights that Dave mentioned, the 5 additional intervention special positions that were added to the budget this year have allowed for our primary students to be scheduled early on in the fall. In years past, we sort of had to wait until sort of mid-year when we could gauge our numbers. Is there enough room at certain schools to where we can service K-1 students? Depending on the building size, that may or may not happen. So a lot of students in the K-1 level, it was really sporadic in terms of whether or not they received the support. And as you can imagine, the longer you delay support that students need, the gap is just going to widen between them and where they should be. So I think Irene Fountas and Gay Sue Pinnell say it pretty well, that the most effective intervention is implemented early in a child's school career before the cycle of failure is established. The intervention specialists provide resources and activities for Tier 1 classroom interventions. In the past, again, our intervention specialists were traveling. We basically, we had 2 teachers traveling amongst 5 buildings. There's no way they could also find time within their schedule to be working with teachers on a regular basis to make sure that they can help support them in providing interventions in the classroom itself. So although we did have sort of tier 1 in the classroom, it was really incumbent upon the classroom teacher themselves to sort of figure out what types of interventions are needed, how to implement those interventions, and it's a very difficult task to manage. Again, Tier 2 students are now scheduled at much, much more appropriate levels. We are now able to adhere to the 4-to-1 ratio. Tier 3 students were never really scheduled in the past as Tier 3 students. They were really lumped in with our Tier 2 students. Again, 8, 9 students with just 1 teacher. And having more people obviously allows much more time and flexibility. We now no longer have to figure in teacher travel time, so that allows us to schedule more students. They're able to get in and out of classrooms much more frequently. They're able to work with teachers throughout the day. They're able to see their students throughout the day doing things other than just pulling them out. It's enabled them to really get to know their students at a much deeper level, which obviously makes for a much more effective program. The other piece Dave mentioned was the RTI scheduling block. Just to give you an idea of what this looks like, this is just one of the buildings. It works no different really than phys ed, music, art, where a group of students gets pulled out at a specific time each day so that today on a Monday, grade 3 is going to be pulled from 9:30 to 10:20. That's when they go for their intervention services. As opposed to in the past, we really had to just sort of piecemeal things, and what would happen is you'd have a student that's receiving intervention services for ELA, and the reading teacher comes to pull them out of class, and they're pulling them out of their classroom ELA instruction. So now it's not an additional support, it's support for something they need extra help with, and they're really just getting the same amount because you're pulling them out of that class. Or a student that's struggling in math, they're missing their regular math instruction to be pulled out for their intervention. So they're not getting the extra support, they're really just getting a little bit smaller level support, but not at the level of really seeing these students twice a day for these disciplines. So this has had a huge impact. We've really been able to minimize the pulling of students from core instruction. It's not a perfect system. Some students have multiple services, so obviously they're not going to fit the block perfectly, but for the majority of our students, we're able to allow them to still get all of their core class instruction and then receive this as an additional instruction, not as just a replacement here and there. So now I'm going to turn the program over to our magnificent teachers who will explain a little bit more about what exactly happens in both our ELA and our math intervention systems. So I believe I'm first going to turn it over for some ELA.
Hi, I'm Laura Feinberg. I teach reading at Hammergrail. One of the resources we use at Hammergrail and all the elementary schools have access to is called LLI. It stands for Leveled Literacy Intervention. Basically, the gurus of guided reading, Fountas and Pinnell, came up with an intervention system for all the grades, kindergarten through, I think it even goes till 6th grade now, maybe even higher, where it comes with a very comprehensive kit for each grade level. So this is my second year using the 1st grade system, and I love it. It's wonderful. It comes with tons of books. All the books are really high interest to the kids. They're series. They have series in them, so the kids get really excited about that when a new book comes out. The 1st grade system obviously has a lot of foundational skills in it, a lot of phonemic awareness, a lot of phonics, stuff that maybe the kids missed or need a little bit extra instruction with, which is basically what I do. Their kids need a little bit more in a certain area than others, so I beef that up and then try to move them on. I also was able to get the 3rd grade system this year, which is very different than the 1st grade system in that the books are a lot more books. And obviously the focus isn't on foundational, but it's more on word work, fluency, vocabulary, writing, comprehension. So, but like I said, very comprehensive. I brought a couple examples of books, but they also, in the 3rd grade system, have basically any genre you could think of. So there's a novel unit, there's information books, there's other nonfiction books just about animals, there's series, they have humorous books, graphic novels. I'm trying to think one more. Oh, they have these books called two-way books. So one side is a book, this is Blizzard's, this is a historical fiction story about a blizzard that happened in the 1940s, and then when you flip it over, there's another story, and this is a narrative nonfiction about the actual blizzard that happened in 1940. So it's like a nice little way to have kids really learn about a topic with multiple genres. I can't say enough about it. I love it. I think it's tightened my instruction up a lot. I think I've become a stronger teacher using the program. They provide teachers with tons of support. In the lower grade system, the books go home with the kids, so there's a huge parent component there where they read with their kids at home, and then they come back and return the books, and the kids are very responsible and they do very well with it. And I love the program. I think it's also helpful for teachers too. They see the books that are going home, and they see where the kids are, and it's very much geared toward their instructional level. It's their zone of proximal development. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, it's right where they need to be. So, and this is only the second year, but I had a lot of success last year with my 1st graders. So, I think that's it.
Hi, Tuckers. We're a tag team. So, hi, I'm Kyle Meyer, and the first thing I wanted to say was that I had Ellie Bell in 3rd grade, and now I feel really old. But anyway, I'm going to piggyback on what Laura just said. Thanks, Dave. We have a new program. We are the math interventionists. Cindy and I have been doing this job for 4 years now, and we're both former classroom teachers. And this year, we were lucky enough to have a similar system to the LLI for math called Do the Math. And the woman who started the program with Scholastic is named Marilyn Burns, and if you're in education, you know Marilyn Burns. She's been around forever. When I first started teaching, I had her original book, and it was my Bible, and I still refer to it quite a bit. She's just amazing. She was conceptual understanding before it was a big thing. It's all concrete, hands-on learning. These kits, there are 13 different modules, and it goes all the way from number sense up to fractions, and there are 3 levels within each unit. So the last level of each unit is all problem solving and applying what they've learned in the lower kits. It comes in these great little containers, and There's always a literature component to it as well, which the kids love, making the connection between math and the language arts piece. So the books are here for us. The part that's really helpful to us as interventionists, sorry, I'm speaking for you, is that there is a pre and a post assessment, so we can screen the students in the beginning to see where they will fall in terms of their skill level. And then we go through the module lessons, and then at the end, we're able to do a post-assessment to see how much they've learned and whether we need to go back and hit some different areas that they may still be lacking in. And it's all really foundational skills that they are lacking and that they need a boost in. And so far, we've just been learning this as we go this year as well, but we're really both enjoying it and hearing from our colleagues in other buildings very, very similar answers to that. So I'll let Cindy speak a little bit more about the lessons themselves.
Well, first off, I just wanted to say, I think in terms of the impact of the new interventionists, I think Kyle and I are probably
great.
have had the biggest impact because we were just the two of us traveling between the 5 buildings. And so now we've got a teacher in every building, and it is really made.
And we're not eating in our car anymore.
We're not
so
eating
that's
in
great.
our car anymore.
Thank you for
and
that.
Yeah. So, and we never were able to see Tier 3 kids, and now we are. So that has been wonderful. So that's been great.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to show, in terms of, in addition to the nice, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
To the materials that they gave us, the teacher materials, there's also the, each child gets one of these workbooks, and they just love getting this workbook. I don't know, it's a workbook, but they think it's the most amazing thing. It's got a lot of color in it, and so it's very fun for them. But in addition to that, we have bags and bags of these manipulatives that they gave us that go along with the kit. So everything is hands-on, like Kyle said. It's very, very concrete. One of the activities that I've been playing with my first graders is called, it's called Shake and Spill. It's partly because I'm short and I feel like I can't see. It's called Shake and Spill, and it is the most easy game that the kids love. It's basically, they've got this little cup, and inside the cup they have 2-sided counters, and they shake and spill, literally. And we started with 5, and all the sums and how they can make 5, and now we're up to 6. Well, I can't even tell you how excited they were today when we were playing the game again. And at the end, so we finished playing, and it's called Race to the Top. So how many different ways you can get to 6 we were doing today. And then it's the first child that gets all their, 3 plus 3 or 4 plus 2, whatever it is, to get to 6. And then when they finished, and they're so excited about that, then I had them close up their workbooks and then on the easel write all their facts to 6. And both of those children had absolutely no problem. It was wonderful. So it's so concrete for them, and it's really, from what we've been seeing so far, it's working well, and we're excited about it. So, yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah,
We
thank
appreciate
you.
the support.
Great. Anyone have any questions? Any board members? Yes, go ahead.
First, I have a question for Dave, and my question is, I wasn't clear when you were going through the slide about, I think it's like the second slide. Are we doing the intervention with kindergartners, or that's just the literature says is the best practice?
No, we are now.
We
We
are.
are doing it with kindergarten and
Okay.
first graders, which we've always tried to fit them in.
Right.
But typically, we weren't even able to attempt to fit them in until January-ish, when our numbers sort of stabilized. Because really, for an effective intervention program, students, it's not, once you're in, or once you're out, you're out. It's really
Okay.
meant to be a fluid process. And when you only have 2 people traveling amongst 5 buildings, it becomes tricky to make it a fluid process. So it almost does become, once you're in, and once you're out, because it becomes so difficult just to manage the schedules.
Okay, good.
So really, the amount of assessment that we're doing within the intervention classrooms, the teachers are also doing interventions like Ames Web, F&P benchmarking, and through those, we're able to have data points on kids, where then if we have a student that we feel is in need of intervention, we're able to put that through child study team, and we have data meetings where we can properly identify students that need the intervention. And now, because we have enough
Right.
specialists to go around. We can actually schedule them, whereas before it became sort of a numbers game because we just didn't have
Right.
the staffing to meet all of the needs.
And when do you think, just one more question for you, and then I have a question for the teachers. When do you think you'll be able to see actual data that says this investment that we made in 2015-16 has yielded X, progress in terms of the testing or whatever?
Well,
When-
I mean, on the individual child level, you should see it fairly quickly because we
Okay.
do a number of interventions throughout the year. Students that are in this program, instead of doing the Ames Web only twice a year, might be doing it 4 times a year. So we're getting additional data points on these students. And hopefully what we'll see is that the number of students that we traditionally got in 2nd and 3rd grade starts to diminish because we're catching them in K-1.
Right,
So it'll
okay.
probably take a couple years before you start to see that, year 2, 3, when those levels start to shrink, I think that's when you'll really see that the program is being successful.
Okay.
And the other piece to think about one of the intents of RTI is that you see less referrals for special education. So, as Dave said, over the next, 2 to 3 years, you'd like to think that we're getting students at a younger age, we're able to provide. Sorry.
That was a very powerful point.
It was. I was like, the intervention so that we have less students being classified in
So
special
We
education.
might see that.
Before you ask that question of the teachers, I have a related question to how closely does this tie, because I know one of the slides talks about identification of students with learning disabilities. So how does this tie in with the students with other disabilities, for example, emotional or developmental, or does it at all?
It does, because a lot of times the students we see who are struggling academically, sometimes it is because of learning issues, but other times it might be related to social issues, emotional issues, family issues even. So RTI is comprehensive in trying to address all of those needs.
Can I ask a related question before you ask your question of teachers?
They know what you're asking, I guess.
I know it's going to take a few years to get those data points, but how have the regular teachers noticed any difference in the students in a sense of being, having better self-esteem or just feeling more successful and, helping improve their performance probably on a lot of other things because they're having this?
Well, I think with the smaller ratios, that's huge. So if the child is in a group of 2, they get lots of attention from us, and they feel that success, and they're able to do more. So when you compare a group of 4 kids to a group of 2 kids, the group of 2 kids are going to get more accomplished in that 25 minutes than the group of 4 kids are. So I think the pace is faster for them, and they're seeing improvements. So, I think the kids feel, very successful at this time, and I think the teachers appreciate that as well. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, it was when they were doing other things in the classroom, did they have, is this program helping them to have better self-esteem and feel successful in doing, other activities in the classroom?
I would say so, because hopefully what we're doing is we're building their skills up so they are more successful with the classroom tasks. So they are, as far as reading goes, there's reading in everything. So if their reading is improving, they're going to perform better in math because they can, they're stronger readers now, where before maybe they had a hard time with the reading and that affected the math.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my question for the teachers is, well, first of all, it's really obvious that you love what you do. You can tell by how you present. And I would say that for our PIG students out there, this is important in life to like what you do. So you just saw an example of people where it's very obvious. And I think that's a great thing to showcase for students to see that. So great job there. My question, though, is you must have challenges. You're dealing with a challenging job, dealing with the neediest students. So what would you say is your biggest challenge?
I do think someone said earlier that, some of these students we see have issues they have multiple issues. Many of the students we see in math also receive reading services. And sometimes there are other pieces that are beyond our control. home life situations or peer relationship issues. And so sometimes we have to bring all of those parts together, which can be challenging. And speaking as a former classroom teacher, a lot of times you would see huge amounts of growth within the classroom setting. And in this population, it is oftentimes much slower, and there is a lot of, one step forward, two steps back. So sometimes that can be discouraging as a teacher, feeling like maybe you're not making a difference, but then they have these incredible bright moments where you say they are really getting it. So you have to have a lot of patience, you have to have a lot of humor, a lot of really TLC for them. Some of them just love being there in a small group and feeling successful in the small group, whereas sometimes they don't always feel successful in the general ed classroom. They can be a shining star with us, whereas they can't always. So it's very rewarding too, from that aspect, but you have to wear many hats and have a lot of patience.
I just wanted to add one other thing. I think, too, what's been a real challenge, and I think Kyle did a nice job of describing the challenge in terms of the child, but there's also the challenge within the school, and our job is to work on those foundational skills. And so oftentimes you really have to remind the teacher, and as well as yourself, that, okay, it's okay that we're not doing long division in fourth grade right now, or, because that's not where my student is. So sometimes it's really, and we talk about this a lot as a group, about how we really have to look at that child individually. So that's been, it's sort of a personal challenge as well as one that we struggle, within our school itself. And just, I know, my principal is very supportive of that, which has been great, but it can be hard because a lot of the classroom teachers, they've got that pressure to keep that child moving along, and we keep saying we have to step back. We have to meet them where they are and try to move them forward, so.
On the slide with the pyramid, we have 3 different tiers. It may be hard to let us know how many students might be in Tier 1, but do you have a sense of how many students are receiving services at Tier 2 and 3?
Actually, I can give you ballpark numbers on all 3 tiers. Just keep in mind, we have several students that actually do receive services in both ELA and math.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you sort of an average to just be able to make sense out of it. So Tier 1, district-wide, we have approximately 300 sessions scheduled, so that would be 150 students ballpark. But again, that's Tier 1. Tier 2, the number's fairly similar. It's about 280 sessions scheduled, so, ballpark 140, 150 students, because again, many of them are receiving both services. And then Tier 3, which again are our neediest students, you're looking at about 75 to 80 district-wide, so, probably 40-ish students. And, of all the levels, Tier 1 is the trickiest because, again, that's the classroom teacher doing some progress monitoring. Many times students are really fluid in there, depending on the nature of what the last benchmark assessment was on, especially like something skills-based like math. They may have strong and weak points where they test in and out. So that's a really fluid number, but I wouldn't expect it to grow outside of that. It's going to be a different pool of kids maybe from marking period to marking period, if you want to think of it in those terms, quarter to quarter. But in terms of an overall number, that's about right. So I think overall, if you really look at the kids that we're either pulling out or monitoring within the classroom, we're at ballpark 300 students, which in the past was not near that number. Yeah.
And it also sounds like the RTI teachers are helping, or resources for teachers who are doing that tier level intervention in the classroom, I think, from what you've said.
Correct, and that's where having the kits has come in really to be helpful. Is it gives the intervention specialists not only structure within their own pull-out sessions, but when classroom teachers are looking for resources, the kits themselves have resources that are more intended for aiding the classroom teacher do some additional differentiated instruction as well.
Okay, I have one last question. On slide 4, where it has the RTI scheduling blocks, the time periods are 50-minute sessions, but the pullouts are about 25 to 30. So are you doing 2 sessions, or does that account for preparation time, or? it sounds like where you listed the length
Yeah,
of time.
so basically what you do is when you look at the overall, it's more important that you don't look at necessarily the length of time at once. So if it's 50 minutes, you might have some students going for the first 25, some going for the second 25.
Okay, good. So you might be doing 2 sessions in there or something. Okay, great, thank you.
Correct.
And yeah, I think every building had used this as a framework, but we had flexibility. So, for example, at Hamgrail, we were able to tweak it within 5 minutes, so we really have an hour for each block. So we have 30 minutes, and we're usually seeing 2 groups within that hour.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. How are the students identified to be placed in each tier?
Through assessments, and then moves through, like some of these, the Ames Web Assessment, for instance, when students take that, it's automatically sort of flagged within that system where students should be. But more importantly, we rely very heavily on teacher input, and it goes through child study. And when we meet with our data teams, we have the intervention specialists are involved with that, the child psychologist, the building principal, special education, if that's, so it's a sort of a team approach, and it's really based on where they fall on the battery of assessments.
Do you look at the ELA, so if they're in the range of 2, they might be considered, or it's not
Well,
necessarily?
again, that really only applies to your 4th and 5th graders because
Right.
they're the only ones that have taken that. So that's also, again, just another data point. That's not something that automatically says yes or no, it's just another data point.
All right, the other question I have for Ms. Meyer, Ms. McCollum, how many students do you usually have, well, what is your caseload, basically? How many students do you see per day or per week?
I have 25 students right now. 7 of them are Tier 3. So those are the more intensive kids that I see, 4 times a week, and either one-on-one or in a group of 2. That's my
Okay, great, thank you.
I have 19 students, and I have 5 that are Tier 3, and they're upper grade students, 4th and 5th. So I see them 4 days a week.
And do you feel like it's that's enough time to work with the students? Obviously, you could always use more, but does it seem like it's overwhelming?
It seems to be working now. I mean, some of the challenges of the upper grade kids, especially 5th grade, is that they have so many other, they have DARE, and they have choir, and they have band, and so they have a lot of other conflicts for our scheduling purposes. So I think it works out at the 4th and 5th grade level. And then our younger grades, we're seeing them 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And that seems to be pretty sufficient as of right now.
All right, great, thanks. And Dave, I have one last question. I know gifted students are part of RTI. We don't talk a lot about that. Do we have a certain number that?
They're not part of RTI per se, they're part of sort of our structure in that we have specialists that offer the challenge program, and some of our challenge teachers are also part of delivering the RTI services.
So you might have an RTI teacher who's 2/3
So they might
RTI, 1/3 challenge.
Challenge, correct.
Okay.
But were you asking is there a cap on the number of students? That's how I interpret your.
No, I just wanted to see if the teachers thought it was a reasonable caseload to have. If you're seeing 25 students, is it something that we need to add to, take away from?
Any other questions, Ray? Yes, Mike.
I was just curious, what's the most important thing you think the parents can do to assist you in your efforts?
Mine is easy, just read.
Yeah.
Pretty much just read.
I was going to say, really, just spend that time doing the extra work, at least in math. We talk a lot about math facts, and it's not the be-all and the end-all, but it certainly helps you, when you know your math facts, to then do the higher level computation. And I think problem solving is a really, really important part in math nowadays, getting kids to really think critically about what is the question asking and how do we apply this to our real-world situation. And I think you can do that at every grade level. Just have discussions with your kids, make up examples from, when you're in the grocery store, we want to buy this number, pounds of this, how will we figure that out? Giving the kids really that math has a meaning in the real world, and just showing them ways that they can think it through. So and of course reading for that too.
Yeah, I would just add to that, just the language of math. That is sometimes a lot of kids just have trouble with that. You know, what does that mean? What does it mean to, when things are joined, when things are, you know, left behind, whatever. So that is, that can be difficult for kids. So like Kyle said, just talking to your kids as much as possible with real life stories. That's what I always tell parents at conferences. And place value. For some reason, it seems like most of the kids that come to see us have, the older kids definitely for sure, have had some, for whatever reason, they have not had that foundation in place value. So that's why they usually end up seeing us. And I just wanted to say one thing about the whole block thing, because this is new to us this year, and I don't know if I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, but we love the block system, and in our building, it was so easy for scheduling, and even, we just had another meeting in November, like what was our 8-week meeting, Heidi? And so I had a bunch of third graders that were I had them in 2 different groups, and then after the meeting, I added another one in, and I regrouped them based on who, their needs and who would work best together. And because of the block system, it was just easy to do. In the past, it would have been like, oh my God, to have to reschedule these kids would be a nightmare. But so we're loving the block system.
And does that exist in all the other schools too?
All the
I
elementary
mean, I see
schools.
Heidi and Diana, but I see.
All the elementary schools do that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yes,
Matt, I just have
Diane.
a comment. I just have a comment as Lynn is pushing at me, but asking me what I think of the program. 'Cause I'm a special ed teacher. I think it's a phenomenal program. I think you guys are doing a really great job. And I was definitely like one last year that really wanted to get more of the RTI teachers on board. So I'm glad it's working so well. So, you happy?
Joanne has one more question she does.
So what happens to the kids when they leave the elementary level? What do we do with them for supporting them in the middle school?
Yeah, well, we've always had a more formalized
Okay.
AIS program at the middle school. We
Okay.
don't call it RTI there, we call it AIS. But there's basically 2 levels there, similar to tiers 2 and 3, where some students go sort of on more of an everyday basis in a larger chunk of time, and then some do it during home base, so it might be like a couple days a week type thing. But so we have it in both reading and math at the middle school level.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and on behalf of the whole board.